Hello and welcome along to the latest Forza Italian Football podcast. I'm sure many of you were greeted by Nick dancing in the corner. As ever, I'm Conor Clancy and I'm joined by Nicholas Carroll. Nick, how's everything?
Yeah, not too bad, Connor. Always happy to be back talking about Serie A. Sorry about that.
Did you not learn last week when that happened?
I did exactly the same thing last week. There you go. Just if you don't mind, just a quick shout out to all the Australians and New Zealanders out there. If you're probably listening, it's the 25th of April, which is Anzac Day. So just like to myself and possibly, I guess, on behalf of FIF, pay our respects to all the diggers and all the soldiers who put their lives on the line for their respective countries, not only in World War One but across all the wars. So
it's a special Australian theme today. We've got Vito Doria also joining us for the second time in only a couple of weeks. Vito, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. Yeah, it had been such a long time since I was on previously, so it's good to be back on this time around.
Yeah, we promised we'd get you back on soon, and we're true to our word, if anything else. Right, so I suppose we'll kick things off with Juventus, start at the top. But to be honest, I was thinking about this before we came on air, and I don't really know what there is to say about Juve, because what can we say when discussing Juventus in a Serie A context? They're head and shoulders above the rest. They smashed Genoa 4-0. Nick, to kind of put you in a good mood, give us some of your best Juve loving, please.
Yeah, I guess it's almost when we do the pod every week, we do maybe brush over Juve a bit because it's the same old with them, and I guess a lot of more of the competition in the table is further down the table. So which is understandable, but I guess it's probably time we do pay them a bit of praise, because I mean, not only from the Barcelona match, but the way they've been going about themselves on the pitch, both between the Champions League, at the Champions League by knocking out Barcelona, but then the way they're just going about their business in Serie A in the meantime, really, it looks like they're almost in second gear. But the professionalism they show during the match, it's quite incredible, the level that they're playing at. It's more than a weekly basis. They're doing it every 3 to 4 days. When you take into consideration Serie A, the Champions League, and going back to the Coppa Italia tie against Napoli. So you got to respect the way that team's gone about it. A big credit goes to Allegri for that, obviously. The way I guess he's gone about this whole season, it hasn't been straightforward to him, and it's been a huge transition with that team. Obviously, Paul Pogba leaving before the start of the season, Pjanic coming in, Gonzalo Higuain coming in, but then actually changing that iconic back three, which at the time, we spoke about it, and there was so much speculation about that changing to the back four, and was it right? Was he doing the right thing, or should he stick with what they know? And but he's proved that he knew exactly what he was doing. That 4-2-3-1 system has worked incredibly, and they just continue to go about their business. They're a professional outfit. They continue to outdo the rest of Serie A clubs in that aspect. And I guess looking at how they're solely representing Serie A, and they have been for, let's be honest, the last 3 or 4 years in Europe. So it's kind of times like this when I think the clubs, the Serie A community in general, maybe should stop criticizing and blaming the Juve for this and that, or the refs and all that, but actually looking at them and seeing how they can kind of lift themselves to be at their level, because they're just so far ahead of anyone else.
Yeah, I think that we do kind of forget that, because it's not all that interesting to talk about them all the time, because you're just heaping praise on them, and that in itself is testament to just how good they are. And I think you're right to mention Allegri, because he often comes under some unfair criticism, even from back when he was at Milan. He's had some problems to deal with this year with Bonucci and Dybala seemingly on a personal level. And if you look at what Bonucci has done since that infamous confrontation on the touchline when he then was banned from the Champions League game, and then the Dybala thing where he didn't shake his hand, but they've just brushed it aside and got on as professionally as ever. Vito, you actually wrote about Juventus for us recently, particularly their defence. So have you any thoughts on Juve, just to, as a general topic of conversation rather than focusing on the Genoa game?
Well, about the Genoa game, at least I thought they played with a greater fluidity than usual. And even once it went to 4-0, I saw that they played with a great intention to score more goals. I mean, even the likes of Barzagli, Storaro, and a few others, they were going to go for shots as well. So that was quite interesting. But if we talk about Juventus in a general sense and in all competitions, I think this time they've got the balance right. And Allegri, he had been doing some tactical experiments early on in the season. And I wrote about when Genoa bet them 3-1 early on, and how that was all muddled up, how Allegri was doing too many changes. But this time, with the team fit as well, he's got the balance right. And as Nick touched earlier, that 4-2-3-1 is really working for them both defensively and offensively.
One of the things, before you were writing the article, I spoke to you briefly about their defence, and we were kind of comparing it to previous great defences. One thing that I've noticed is recently, Andrea Barzagli keeps coming on in the big games to change from a back four to a back three. But normally, when you see a substitute come on and it means there's a tactical change, there's all these orders being dished out from the coach or the player coming on. When Barzagli comes on every time, nothing is said. Everyone just goes, all right, we know what we're doing, and everyone's into position. And it really does speak a lot of how well drilled they are. Nick, you wanted to talk about Leonardo Bonucci's own goal, didn't you? Or his goal, not
his goal. I just thought it was worth a mention. That was, I mean, it was like 10 minutes after he had a goal disallowed, I think, for a foul in the box. And then he goes and runs half the field, beats a player, and then loops it over the keeper. That was just incredible. If you have not watched it, go on YouTube or whatever highlights there it is and have a look, because do yourself a favor. It's a great goal.
Yeah, would you?
Oh, I totally agree. Not only was it a great run from halfway, but I was reading the match report in La Gazzetta dello Sport, and one of the writers there called it a Bonenbauer goal. So basically combining Bonucci's surname and Franz Beckenbauer's one. So I thought, okay, a tad exaggerated, but you could see the style comparisons there, just that graceful run from his defensive line, and then, of course, to just basically waltz through the midfield and score in that manner. It was very impressive.
Yeah, that's definitely high praise, but that's one of the things we've come so used to seeing from Bonucci, isn't it? He's absolutely brilliant on the ball. He's as comfortable as most midfielders would aspire to be. Nick, where would you rank Bonucci in terms of world's best central defenders?
I mean, I might be a little bit biased given that I watch more Italian football than anything else, but you put me on the spot, but to my mind, I can't think of anyone that, to me, he would be the number one.
Yeah, I think
he probably has been the last 2 seasons, at least.
Yeah, so we'll move on now and we'll stay in the top 3. Napoli slipped up, didn't they? They drew 2-2 away at Sassuolo, who, Sassuolo, that is, haven't actually been that great this year. I know a lot of people came to like them over the last few seasons, and they've been really enjoyable, but this year they've not quite been themselves. Vito, what happened to Napoli here?
Well, they met a Sassuolo side that showed that on the day they can still be a rather formidable unit. And by the same token, Napoli showed that sometimes when they have an off day, they don't play with the same fluidity as they've become accustomed to. I reckon Di Francesco actually got his defensive setup right. A lot of people consider him to be a disciple of Zeman, but he's not as naive as his mentor in the defensive phase, and it showed against Napoli because I thought most of the time it was like Sassuolo's back four. They were rather tight, and Paulo Cannavaro, he showed that he had he's got great experience, but his awareness and anticipation, despite his age, was quite impressive. And I think he was one of the differences between Sassuolo getting 3 points or being another recipient of a Napoli hiding.
Yeah, well, if we're going to look at Napoli here, Arik Milik scored one of the first goals, if not the first, since he's come back from injury. Nick, how important do you think his comeback is? I know Mertens has been brilliant, and there was that stat last week about how they're the only team in the top 5 leagues who have 4 more players on 10 or more goals or something. But yeah, Milik coming back is surely a huge boost, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess his presence was possibly felt a bit less because of the incredible form of Dries Mertens, who has filled in that centre forward role in an amazing way. So possibly his importance at the start of the season maybe has been overlooked since then somewhat because of that. But no, it's really good to see him back on the score sheet. I mean, it wasn't his greatest goal ever. Let's say it was a bit of a scrappy goal, but yeah, as you mentioned, it was his first goal back from injury. It was his first Serie A goal since the 17th of September in their Napoli's 3-1 win over Bologna, and I think he got a brace on that day. He did get a brace on that day, so good to see him back on the score sheet. And I guess it goes to that whole element of Napoli and their depth, where it has been an element where they have struggled with in previous seasons. And in a lot of ways, Sarri has been questioned, I guess, about his reluctance to use players beyond that starting 11. So it's good to see Sarri trying to bring him in a bit more into that team again, because I think he can be a very important part of that team, even if he isn't necessarily picked in that starting 11, because he can provide something very different to Dries Mertens. I think actually Mertens scored a header on the weekend, but it's very rare that he would score a header. And Milik does provide that kind of aerial threat. And you think back to those games against Juventus where those crosses were coming in. Mind you, they were pretty shocking crosses at times, but they were putting these crosses in to these guys, you know, Insigne or Dries Mertens, 5-foot guys who were just trying to jump against Chiellini or something. It's just obviously not going to work. So he just provides Sarri another option in attack. And I guess Pavoletti as well is there in the background, which he's kind of been forgotten about. But, you know, we've seen what Milik can do importantly in Serie A. So it's good to see him back. And it would be good to see him brought more into that team, because I think the more Sarri can bring in these fringe players into the team, the likes of not only Milik in attack, but the likes of Rog, Diawara in midfield, those youngsters coming through, they can really build a squad that can actually challenge for Europe and hopefully for a Scudetto in seasons to come.
And Nick, what about the rest of the season? You've been very, very, very vocal and very keen to remind us how you keep tipping Napoli for second place. They're now 4 points behind Roma, who of course won tonight. Is that done?
No, it was a setback, I'll give you that, but I'm not giving up hope just yet. Napoli do have, I'm fairly sure they have, they have Inter coming up, but after that, they do have a better run.
Difficult game though at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I should say that's a guaranteed 3 points for Napoli. So, no, but they do have a somewhat of an easier run than Roma. So it is Roma's to lose, make no mistake. And given the way they kind of going about their business on most of the occasions, with the odd kind of deflating game, they should get second place. So yeah, I might have to concede to that one. So.
Right, before we get to the, well, exciting for everyone else, but depressing for you, Nick, we'll look at Roma. They won brilliantly tonight. Vito, do you want to talk us through what happened there? I happened to miss the game. I'm sure a lot of the listeners might have had to miss it as well. So bring us up to date there.
Yeah, well, it was a rather comprehensive win for Roma. So it was a rather routine performance for them. They just destroyed Pescara, and the thing that really set them up was that near the end of the first half, they got 2 goals in the space of 2 minutes. El Shaarawy, who usually doesn't start for Roma, managed to get 3 assists. So I thought that was a pretty good performance from him. And, well, most of the big names scored. So that was another good win for Roma and should put them in good stead to maintain that second place.
Yeah, is this the difference? I know Roma are kind of a bit of a joke figure historically for being, they tend to bottle things and slip up when they really shouldn't, but they beat Pescara comfortably, which other teams haven't quite done this year. Is this the difference between Roma and the likes of Milan, the Milan clubs basically, Nick? What do you think?
Sorry, was that to me?
Yes, you're Nick.
Yeah, I think we discussed it maybe last week or a week before that Roma is becoming more of a consistent team and less of the kind of butt of the joke almost, as you kind of alluded to. And that's why I think it was last week when we were saying it's not necessarily a bad season for them, even if they were to finish third, because they've become an incredibly more consistent team, and they're getting rid of that kind of I don't know, that almost that attitudinal or that ability of them to just bottle it kind of in certain games, which they can still kind of do. But I think Spalletti's done a good job. Luciano Spalletti's done a good job in trying to coach that out of them and building this new kind of team with belief in themselves, which, to be honest, I think has been a huge thing for Roma. That belief that they can actually compete at the highest level in Serie A and compete against a Juventus for a Scudetto. I'm not sure in previous seasons the players really believed that they were up there, and that kind of showed a lot of the time. So they're more consistent, they're a lot more clinical, and their defense has, somehow put it together. A lot of us doubted that defense doing much this season, but, to their credit and to Spalletti's credit, they put it up together. So, they've basically put the likes of, well, you mentioned the Milan clubs, they've put them to shame, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. You mentioned that Roma have strengthened their defence this year, and 2 teams who definitely didn't have their best defensive performances this weekend were Fiorentina and Inter, where it finished 5-4 to La Viola. Yes, 5-4. I don't really know where to start with this game, but Nick, you wanted 30 seconds on Inter, so here's your 30 seconds.
Well, to be honest, the 30 seconds is to basically say that, we've discussed Inter quite a bit on the pod this season, and it's not particularly because I happen to be an Inter fan. It's because the club, in being somewhat of a circus the last couple of seasons, seems to always be in the news. So there's always something to talk about. But to be honest, off the back of that game, I don't think we should be talking about a team where the players just simply don't have the attitude. They're not putting the effort in. I would much rather speak about a team, a Crotone or even an Empoli, who are scrapping at the bottom of the table, but are actually putting in effort and playing for the emblem that's on their badge, on their heart, because that Inter team's just a joke at the moment. And I think everyone, including myself, is sick of hearing about them and talking about them. So let's talk about Fiorentina instead.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sick of talking about Inter this year, to be honest, because, it's a circus, it's a mess. But they were doing well for a while, now they're not. So let's talk about Fiorentina. Because to be fair, we've given them a fair bit of stick on this podcast, but these last couple of weeks, they're showing some good signs. I know they didn't beat Empoli, which was a bit funny, but that's a good win for them. Vito, I'll bring you back in. What do you think about Fiorentina's chances now of pushing on and getting maybe a Europa League place? They're now 1 point off Inter and 3 behind Milan, and neither of those sides are consistent. Do you think they have a chance?
I reckon Fiorentina has a chance, and it's only on the basis of the Milanese clubs being so inconsistent. They just do not have much stability in terms of form now. And the consistency of the performances is no longer there anymore. So now I think, at least with Fiorentina, they do have the attacking prowess, and as they showed on the weekend, they managed to score goals without Nikola Kalinic, who didn't play. Instead, it was Kuma Babaka who was up front, and even Matthias Vecino, he scored 2 goals from midfield, so that's pretty good as well. Another thing too is Bernardeschi missed the penalty, so if he's missing a penalty and he wasn't among the 5 goals, it goes to show that Paulo Sousa has some decent contributors. So for the next 5 rounds, if the other players can do their own contributions, play their roles and so forth, they can make a difference for Fiorentina getting that 6th place.
Definitely. Nick, you were keen to talk about Fiorentina, so there's your chance to talk about Fiorentina.
Oh, well, I mean, it was mainly just to deflect off Inter because I'm sick of talking about it. They're just awful. No, but I mean, kind of flowing off the back of what we said last week, that, you know, I really do believe there's something in this Fiorentina outfit, mostly from midfield to their attack. There's a lot of potential there, and you do see glimpses of it every now and then. It's just it seems like the cogs aren't quite moving consistently with the Viola at the moment, which I guess is why you do speculate whether Paulo Sousa should be there next season. But when you look at their form, I mean, it's not actually that bad. Putting aside, obviously, their loss to Empoli last week, their only losses this whole year in Serie A have been to AC Milan and Roma, and that's it. And then Empoli last week. So they haven't been winning that much, but they haven't been losing as well. So, and the big thing with Fiorentina remains that defense, and I guess that was another aspect that was illustrated on the weekend, where, you know, you can possibly excuse them at 5-2 up for possibly turning off a bit, but I mean, Inter shouldn't have got, mind you, they were great finishes by Icardi, but Inter shouldn't have got those goals that easily. And their defense is a problem because they're not, I mean, they don't have a full list of centre backs playing there. They're still playing, you know, the likes of Sanchez there. So they do need to strengthen that team. But no, in attack, they have struggled in attack to get inside the box. They seemingly didn't have a problem against Inter. But it was good to see Kumar Babakar up amongst the goals. That, I think it was his first goal, where he was just up against Medell and he just kind of stopped and just almost passed it into the corner past Handanovic. Was just it was really nice. It you know, it wasn't the hardest shot, but it was just beautifully placed. A great little play. And I've always kind of wondered this whole thing with Babakar, because with Kalinic, I'll admit I'm not his biggest fan, and you know, maybe you guys have some opinions about this, and I'd be interested in any listeners, because I know there is quite a few Fiorentina fans out there that listen. So Babakar, I've always found him to be a lot more consistent. It seems like he doesn't get a lot of game time, but when he does get time on the field, he seems to do the job a lot more consistently than Nikola Kalinic, who I do believe has more all-around talent than Babakar, but he seems to have periods and long periods where he just doesn't quite get it together and get the finishes that he needs. I actually looked at the stats to actually see how they weigh up against each other. So this season alone, Nikola Kalinic averages a goal every 164 minutes, and Kumar Babakar averages a goal every 111 minutes. So that's 53 minutes difference less than that Babakar scoring a goal. And I thought, okay, I'll go back another season. So I went back to last season's, just the Serie A, 2015-16, when you remember when Kalinic went on that incredible run at the start of the season, and then the rest of the season kind of just went into a dip. So the total season, he averaged a goal every 214 minutes. And again, Babakar averaged a goal every 160 minutes. So 54 minutes again, that less that he was scoring a goal on average. So I would like to know if what the people out there think, or what you guys think, if how does Babacar kind of fit? Because to me, he's always been more efficient as a striker for Fiorentina. And, when there was a lot of talk about Kalinic possibly going for, a number like 40 million euro or something, that's why at the time I kind of thought, well, they should really take this and invest it in the team, in some defense, because I just don't think Kalinic is that consistent striker that the Viola really need.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you there. I've always rated Babacar, but been a bit frustrated because he's never quite convinced me. But I don't know if this is just something that I've made up, but he always seems to do better at the end of seasons. Again, I'm going to look into that because it's something that seems to be in my head, and it could be completely nonsense. But Roberto Beswick has joined us in the comments. So do join if you have any comments on Fiorentina or anybody else we've discussed or are going to go on to discuss. Let us know your thoughts. Ask us your questions. There was a lot of interaction going on there last week, and it was great. Helped us move things along quite nicely. But I think we'll move on from that Fiorentina Inter game now to Milan Empoli. Believe it or not, we had a few Milan fans getting onto us asking to talk about the Rossoneri, and to be honest, I don't know why they want us to talk about them this week, because after fighting back in the derby so heroically last week, they went and embarrassed themselves by losing to Empoli, the mighty force at the foot. Not quite at the foot, but they're down there.
2 in a row for Empoli. They're on fire.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying for Crotone, but we'll get on to that.
Yeah.
Vito, have you any thoughts on Milan? Why isn't it going to plan there?
When I look at AC Milan's midfield, I don't think it's at the best, to be honest. That's really a second fringe midfield when you look at it, because they had no Kutsko in midfield. And of course, Bonaventura has had his long-term injury, so he's a huge loss for them. Locatelli had a top start to the season, but this time he's not playing as much just as the season comes to a close. So I don't think the midfield's really up to scratch. And the forward line played too much as individuals. So I hardly saw Suso and Deulofeu combining with Lapadula. But in saying that, I think praise should be given to Empoli, because at the back end of the season, they know that they can still get dragged into the relegation battle, but they're winning crucial games. And it goes to show, if you have the right work ethic and you have good organisation, you can still get results.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Empoli for a bit then, Nick? Because this is crazy. Where has this run come from? Just as Crotone have started to put together a few wins as well. And their form, you could argue, deserves to keep them up. But Empoli, to be fair, are grinding out the results when it matters, despite not scoring goals all season.
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes to that whole point that I mentioned about Inter. You kind of want to speak about teams that are playing with heart. And, granted, Empoli don't have the greatest squad or talent, but, they're not, I mean, even strategically, they don't play the most advanced game, but, they play with heart. And that's the only reason you're going to get wins, back-to-back wins away from Fiorentina and AC Milan. That's impressive for an Empoli, that a team that had scored a ridiculous amount of goals, and by that I mean like barely any in like 10 or so matches. So, all credit to Empoli. They're fighting for their lives. They saw Crotone coming up, so. I don't know if I would have much to analyze in terms of their style of play, but the difference in that game, I guess, you look at you can almost see it in the shot count. They were more efficient. Milan had 28 shots and only 12 of those on target. Empoli had 11 shots total and 7 of those on target, and then that's how you get a 2-1 scoreline. So, they took their chances a lot better. They were more clinical in front of goal, and that's what happens. And granted, I guess the big problem remains, and to be honest, it's a big problem in Serie A this season. The defensive standard has been pretty appalling, to be honest. You can take Juventus out of that, but apart from that, it's been shocking. For both of those goals that Empoli scored, you have to say, well, the Empoli's first goal, Zapata was just I mean, I'm not sure what he was doing. That was very poor marking off a corner. He was behind his man and, trying to pull him down from behind. And then Empoli's second, Zapata and Paletta just seemed to be, there was no communication. Neither of them knew what each other were doing. And Paletta just seemed to be watching the ball as I think it was Macaroni who headed down and just left his man wide open to finish. So their central defense, Milan, and I'm sure every Rossoneri fan is well aware, but it's not up to the standard that it needs to be for a team, pushing, that's supposed to be pushing for European qualification. So that really needs to be sorted ASAP.
I think you're being very harsh on Zapata and Paletta there. To expect them to be able to deal with Big Mac is, I mean, nobody on this earth could deal with Big Mac. When you've got Massimo Macaroni up front, you've always got a chance. Speaking of goals, still, Lazio. They scored about 6,000 at the weekend by smashing Palermo. I think it was 6-2. They scored 5 goals in 26 minutes, which was a record for Serie A club since 1938. So it just shows how ridiculous that was. But Vito, this is all you. Lazio have been almost breathtaking at times this season.
Simone Inzaghi has created a very effective unit, and on the basis of what we saw on the weekend, they've also proven they can score goals galore. I was happy to see Ciro Immobile score the first 2 goals, because that has taken his tally to 20 goals for the season. And after a few barren spells after leaving Torino the first time, it's good to see that he's being prolific with the Aquile. And it's also, of course, beneficial for the Italian national team to see him in such good form. But, of course, the clear star of this game was Keita Balde. A hat-trick in just 5 minutes, and it's the fastest in this century from what I've read, and also the fastest by a Lazio player. So that's quite an achievement for the 22-year-old. Another interesting thing is that Lazio have usually gone for bargain buys in the last decade or so, or essentially in the Lotito era. But it was good to see a guy called Luca Greco score the 6th goal. And he was on loan to Avellino earlier this season, but he put the icing on the cake, and he's only about 21 or 22 years old as well. So it's good that Inzaghi has even given some of these younger players a bit of playing time and just try to ease them into the senior squad.
Yeah, definitely. And Lazio look like they're returning to Europe. Hopefully they make a better shot at it this time than they did last. They were unfortunate, well, not unfortunate to miss out on the Champions League. But the one Italian team left in Europe this season is obviously Juventus. The Champions League draw was made. They've got Monaco in the semi-finals. How do you rate their chances there, Nick? I know I thought the only team they needed to avoid was Atletico Madrid, and they've done that. So favourites to go through to the final?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was the easiest of, with all due respect, I think it was the easiest of the draw, the teams that they could have drawn. Though in saying that, I mean, that Juventus team really on form are the favourites to take out the Champions League, in my opinion anyway, because, I guess following on from what we discussed earlier, they're just so far ahead of anyone else. And, I think really if they continue on this form and they take out the Champions League, I think it's a very fair statement to say that they are the best team in the world. I'm pretty sure most people would probably confidently say that they're top 3 now. I don't think you could pick another 3 that would be above Juventus. So it'll be interesting. I guess Monaco, they obviously shouldn't be taken for granted that they're going to get through. I am very interested to see the battle between, excuse my pronunciation, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but Kylian Mbappe. I think that's how you say it. I'm really interested to see how he goes against the Juventus defense, because we all know how strong that the Bianconeri defense is, and I guess this is the new wonder boy of European football. So it'll be this is going to be his biggest test on an international stage, basically. So I'm really interested to see how he goes. It would be good to see him, possibly grab 1 or 2 goals. But I think Juventus, barring a major breakdown, should get through to the final, and then it'll be against one of the Madrid teams.
Mbappe is definitely one to watch, but I just worry that Chiellini's going to snap him early on. And I really hope he doesn't, because Mbappe seems to be an exciting player. Vito, while we have you here, there's something that happened in Serie A this weekend that we can't ignore, and that's Patrick Schick's goal for Sampdoria against Crotone. It was Dennis Bergkamp-esque, wasn't it? I don't think I'm exaggerating to compare the two.
Oh, not at all. I reckon Schick is an amazing talent, and that goal in particular showed why he's so highly rated. He'll be 21 this year, so he's still very young, and yet he has the technique and the confidence to replicate a similar goal to Bergkamp. I was even talking about it on Twitter a while back that with his frame and height and also his agility, even as a player, you could say he's similar to Bergkamp, but I would even go as far as to say his style is similar to Bergkamp's compatriot, Marco van Basten. Just that massive shout, but just that height and agility and the movement. I think he's got, lots of potential. And as people saw from that goal, he's not just some tree trunk or statue. He's got some fine mobility for someone of his height. So very impressive to see him score that goal. It's just a shame that Sampdoria didn't come away with any points after he scored that.
Crotone!
But just for those listeners who haven't seen that, go seek it out. It's worth watching. The ball comes to him about 25 yards from goal, and he flicks it to his left, but turns to the right around. I think it was who's Crotone's number 13, Gianmarco Ferrari, and got on to the ball on the other side and just, as cool as you like, slotted it in. But then, as you said, Vito, Crotone came back. Nick, how are you feeling about the Calabrese side? They're doing well, but Empoli are just pulling away.
Empoli, they're ruining it. What are they doing to me?
They're ruining everybody's fun. Big Mac hasn't got the memo, obviously.
Yeah, there's already another Tuscan team. They can, let the Calabrese stay in there. But no, it's trying to look positively. It is actually good to see some of these bottom sides actually winning games, because there was a long period there when none of them were winning anything. So, it is good, and you'd like to see more of these teams developing and being able to cut it in Serie A. I think, in all fairness, it is fair to say that, the bottom 4 teams aren't really at that Serie A level, but, the only way they're going to experience and develop and build as a club is by playing these kind of teams. So they're 5 points behind Empoli from the safe zone.
I held up 5 there. I don't know if that's what you thought I was talking about. I thought you meant the bottom 5 really aren't Serie A standard, with Genoa thrown into the mix as well.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at you. But,
Sorry.
I was going to say they do have Pescara to play still. They're at home to AC Milan actually this weekend, and without taking the piss, if I was a betting man, which I am, I wouldn't mind getting on a draw for that, because. Or a double chance, because there would be some value in that. So I don't know if we have a betting sponsor or anything, but
you know what you've done by saying that? One, you meant Crotone are definitely not going to get a point, and 2, you've just got Milan fans.
I've just won us a betting contract with.
If there's any potential betting partners out there, do get in touch.
Yeah, I can do like a weekly, bet of the week or something like that. Value bet Crotone.
There you go.
First. They also have Udinese at home, so I'm not giving up hope just yet, but Empoli is not really helping, so I'll have a word to Macaroni.
Well, if Empoli's not going to help them out, I think Genoa could actually help them out, really. Because if you look at the Serie A table now, okay, Crotone is on 24, Empoli's on 29, Genoa on 30. 5 rounds left. I'm sure Crotone can make up the margin on Genoa, if not on Empoli, because Genoa are in crisis, and Empoli and Crotone, they're hitting form at the right time, and beating big teams, whereas Genoa, they're an absolute rabble. And you can't just blame the absence of Mattia Perin. They are absolute garbage. And as a Sump fan, it would be revenge for 6 years ago after that mass procession through the middle of Genoa and that mock funeral. But I think it's also punishment for the president Enrico Preziosi for being as unstable as Maurizio Zamparini. So if Ivan Juric can't fix up this mess, you never know. Mathematically, Genoa could go down unless they have a massive turnaround, which I can't see them happen. I can't see that happening because of the spirits and organisation Crotone and Empoli are showing.
Vito, this is a side to you I have never seen before, and I'm really enjoying it.
Vito's just dropped a mic on Genoa.
This reminds me of a feature that Luca Gumby wrote for us earlier on in the season, and I remember when he wrote it, and I saw the headline. I could not stop laughing, and when you were talking about them there again, it just came to mind. The headline was Genoa, no future and nobody's dreaming, which is just sticking a knife in and twisting it and twisting it. And Vito, you just helped them twist another knife in the back of the Genoa supporters this season.
Do we have many Genoa listeners out there?
I
hope they're not.
Probably Drew.
Yeah, Drew Farmer, shout out to you. He's probably the only one.
Drew's a good bloke though, but other than that, most Genoa supporters, forget them. Never respect the Doria family.
Yeah, Drew, we're sorry if you're listening, but this is what happens when you get a Samp fan on the show. They get wild. But Atalanta obviously won again. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but did anybody see the pass Alejandro Gomez played for that Andrea Conti goal?
That was the one in the second minute, right?
Yeah, the one that was about 3 yards offside, but we won't mention that.
Yeah, well, it was offside, was it?
Yeah, clearly.
The pass was, the vision of that was...
I can think of another Argentine, number 10, who regularly plays passes like that. Can you think of his name? No?
Riquelme.
Or Leo Messi. Nick, did you see the photo we put up on the Forza Italian Football Facebook page today?
Don't think I did, no.
Well, basically, Papa Gomez is back at his online tricks again. I'm sure you all saw the celebration that Leo Messi did holding up his shirt to the Bernabeu crowd. Yeah. Well, basically, there was a photoshopped version of Papa Gomez and a clothesline put into that photo. So Papu and Leo are hanging up the washing. It's a lovely little picture. Get over to the Forza Italian Football Facebook page and take a look at that. Obligatory Atalanta and Papa Gomez mentioned out of the way. That'll do it for us this week. Nick, YouTube and Patreon roundup, please.
Can I give you a quick stat as well?
You love your stats, and I'm never one to turn down
I do love a stat. I want to, I spoke about the appalling defense of Serie A, but I kind of want to give. I want to give.
You're going to mention appalling defense of Genoa there.
No. Genoa, shit. I just wanted to emphasize. No. I just wanted to say, on the flip side, there is a lot of exciting talent in Serie A attack, and I don't think it's necessarily because of the appalling defense. I think there's some incredible things happening. So in Serie A this season so far, there's 6 goal scorers that have reached 20 goals or more, and you compare that to all the other major 5 leagues. The Premier League, La Liga, and Ligue 1 all have just 2 that have gone over 20, and the Bundesliga has 3. So it's huge. I guess, I don't know if you call it an achievement, but it's a good stat. I guess a lot of listeners out there probably hear a lot of stick about Italian football and being all defensive, and it's kind of one of those stats that you can use to tell people, look, actually, there's some really exciting attacking talent happening in Serie A at the moment, and it isn't just because of the defense. Because you look at Andrea Bellotti, Dzeko, Mara Icardi, Gonzalo Higuain, Dries Mertens, and Ciro Immobile, they are actually all scoring some really nice goals. It's not as a result of just poor defense. So I just thought I'd give some credit for Serie A's. I guess it's almost flipped to that perception of a defensive league where it's kind of all about the attack this season.
Yeah, it's well-deserved praise because I think it was either last season or the year before. Serie A actually had the highest goals per game average of any of the top 5 leagues, but it still gets this defensive and boring label stamped on it every time it's mentioned by someone who doesn't watch it. But Nick, you've written about Inter or are writing about Inter this week.
Yes,
Go on.
I have. I've done a little piece, I guess, somewhat off the back of the frustrations of this week's loss, but it's basically around Mauro Icardi, and I guess characterized by the fact that he got that hat trick in the game against Fiorentina. But he, to me, that image of him after scoring his hat trick, running back to the halfway line and just standing there, just shaking his head after scoring a hat trick, and you could just see the frustration on his face, just thinking, what do I have to do for this team? So basically, the article is along the lines of, in the current state, Inter don't deserve a player like Mauro Icardi. So please feel free to check that out and let me know what you think. It's I haven't held back at all in terms of Inter as a club and as a team, but I think putting aside the controversial aspects of Mauro Icardi, I think the talent and the potential that he has to be one of the world's best strikers, he should be at a team that can, foster his development and allow him to grow more, because Inter just can't provide that. So give it a read.
Yeah, it's worth reading. It's kind of nice being the first person to read your stuff, because when you go in on Inter, you really do go in. And it'll be nice to maybe annoy some Inter fans this week, because who have we annoyed? We've annoyed Milan, Juve and Fiorentina, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I often get the, saying that, I'm biased towards Inter, but I find that if anything, I'm probably more harsh on Inter than any other club. So that, I'll always try and be subjective. I mean, objective. Oh my God.
Okay,
objective.
Vito, you wrote about Juventus's defense, which is a good piece, and it's worth reading. Listeners, get on it, and we will get you on something again in the coming days. And that will be going up as ever on ForzaItalianFootball.com. If you like what we do, you like the podcasts, the videos, the articles, you can contribute to us by heading over to patreon.com/ForzaItalianFootball, where even as little as $1 or $2 a month can help us to keep bringing you the best content imaginable, #content. Vito, let the listeners know where they can find you on Twitter.
Well, they can find me on Twitter through my handle, so it's @Vito C Doria. So follow me there, and obviously I retweet my articles, but I also have my own little ramblings about Italian soccer, whether it be Serie A, even Serie B, Samp, of course, and maybe the very odd thing about Liga Pro, but very odd.
Yeah, to be fair, I think Vito is probably the best out of all of us at covering all of the action in some way on his Twitter page. You did mention, what did you say, Nick?
Oh, I was just going to say, and get some good coverage of the AFL if any Aussies out there who are following. Vito's on it.
Yeah, being a Brisbane Lions supporter, but even the other teams in the AFL too. I still share my 2 cents. Very blunt, honest and direct. That's my thing.
You did mention Serie B. We're not going to talk about it, but it's good to see Foggia confirmed back into the second tier of Italian football. So congratulations to all involved there. Nick, you're not getting the chance to shout out your Twitter handle, but it's Nick Z Carroll for everyone that wants to know.
Twitter.com, you can find me.
At twitter.com and search for @Nick Z Carroll.
I have a Facebook page too.
Yeah, you got follow
Nicholas Carroll.
So he doesn't have to do this every week.
I share all my videos.
You can follow us on Twitter at Serie A FFC. We also have Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Concalcio on Twitter. I also have a Facebook page.
He has a Facebook page too,
where I chat to Nick Carroll a lot. And
yeah, we do a lot of back and forth kind of chats. So.
We've taken to doing daily messages now, which I quite enjoy.
We should actually broadcast them. That could be like a little feature.
You tried to take one of them to Twitter recently, and I wasn't too pleased. I think they should be best left private now.
It's a work in progress. Well, after you share a bed, there's things to be said.
You were going to say something. the first two letters of share. Yeah. Right, that's it. We've rambled on for far too long. All that's left to say now is ciao for now.